Welcome back. Hope everyone enjoyed the floor. In case anyone's wondering, H-175, which I think some of us thought was up for action, got referred to appropriations yesterday. And so when that finishes its time in appropriations, Representative Maslin will have his moment in the sun. And then we have another bill up for action tomorrow, which I don't think will be referred to appropriations. And so with that public service announcement, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Damien, because I believe we had a couple more sections to go through, or did we finish?
I think we're on education and outreach.
That's what I thought, yes, education and outreach. I remember thinking, that would be a nice place to pick up. He's going to pull it up and then we'll all see.
On page 46, could you make me a co-host, Sorsha? No worries. Okay, so education and outreach on or before June 1, 2025. The director has to develop and make available information and materials to educate and inform employers and employees about the program. It has to be made available in translations into the 5 most commonly spoken languages in Vermont after English. And the website also has to be accessible to individuals with disabilities in accordance with the WCAG 2.1 AA standard, which is a standard accessibility requirement or voluntary accessibility standard that is starting to be used increasingly on websites like this so that individuals with a disability can access the information.
It's like the kind of thing where behind the picture, it has a description.
It includes captions, it includes ability to be read by a screen reader, things like that. And it's a moving target as technology changes. The websites keep having to be updated to work with the latest technology. So.
And then is the availability on the website the only education and outreach?
That's the way the bill is written right now. So it requires the information to be available on the website a month before taxes start being collected. So there is no requirement beyond that to do outreach with employers and employee groups. You could add that to the bill. You could also change the timeline if you think 30 days before taxes is not enough. I mean, there are really kind of 2 considerations. One is getting employers educated to the point where they can file their tax returns at the end of that 3rd quarter, because taxes are due for the quarter starting July 1, but they won't be due until October 31st, the end of the following, for the end of that quarter. So they would have about 5 months to get up to speed. But then the other question is employers and employees managing the leaves in October 2026. So you could mandate additional outreach occurs in the ensuing months.
I think let's note that we might want to bulk up and expand the timeline a little bit so that people are able to know the law exists in order to follow it. Yes, Representative.
There was, I thought, a reference to a posting.
Yeah, that's the notice requirement.
Yeah.
Which is employers will be required to post that. And that posting requirement will, once the division has developed its poster, employers will include that. But that's a little different than the education and outreach.
I was just hoping that it would include some navigation to the website and stuff like that to, in essence, tie the posting to the education and outreach.
Yeah. So
I guess I'd say let's mark that as something that might need a little bit of tweaking and not tweak it now.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're interested in seeing what other states have done, states like California have fairly in-depth FAQs on their website. States like New York have not done such a good job of that. So you can kind of see some of the different examples that are out there. And then the USDOL actually has really detailed information on FMLA. They have an employer side and an employee side packet that you can download, which are examples of sort of like next level educational and informational materials where it goes into every single piece and can be kind of a standalone reference. So.
Do you have those links easily available that you could send?
I could send them to Sorsha after this. I had all the windows open while you guys were on the floor because I was talking to Abby about some of her testimony. And then I closed them all for coming up here so that I wouldn't have like 50 windows open.
And I just meant like eventually would be great. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Moving on, the appropriations, we've already talked about how this needs to be developed a little bit more because the dollar amount is a placeholder. I've also been informed by JFO that my appropriation language needs to be cleaned up. So the money is appropriated to the division from the general fund and then transferred into the special fund for use. And likely we need to break it out by Department of Taxes for their startup costs and division for its startup costs. And then the other piece here just to make note of is B, where the amounts appropriated are an advance payment on the state's portion of the contributions. So at some point when there's a fiscal note on this, you'll have an estimate of what the costs are for state employees. So you'll know how long a loan this is to the program from the state, because it's a zero interest loan from the state to the program to pay the startup costs. Let's see. Questions on that? No? Okay. Adequacy of reserves report. We already talked about this. Are there any questions on that report? Seeing none.
Whoa, slow down.
Anyone else?
Yes.
There's no date though, or am I missing something?
Yeah, I scrolled past it.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Oh, all right.
January
Hey, there we go.
4 years in a row.
Okay, on the 15th, so there's time enough essentially to adjust appropriations.
Yeah, or to adjust the statute. One of the things that's just come up in looking at other states is the reserve amounts vary from state to state. In some states, you're looking at like a 35% reserve. So 75% is where we've set it in the statute, in part because Vermont is small, so our pool is smaller. But it may become clear with the first the projections in 2026 and then the experience in 27, 28, and 29 that 75% is too high a reserve.
Or even actually when JFO comes in, we might decide to lower it based on what we've heard from other states. I think we originally had the 75% as part of the conversation when a lot fewer states were doing this.
Yes, this was much newer when we set the 75%. So
I would like to change the report date to December 15th as my life's project in this building.
okay.
Yeah.
That all reports be due on December 15th so that staff don't work between the 15th and the 1st and so that we can actually get information in time to act on it.
What?
Maybe even December 1st?
December 15th, which is just like, if everyone could help me with this life's project, appreciate it.
My kids would appreciate it too.
Great. So you could help me with this life's project whenever you draft something with me.
I like that goal.
Great.
I'll help you with that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Is the 75% a volatility hedge?
I think we can talk to JFO about that.
Okay.
Okay, the initial approval of private plans. So under this, if you are a private employer and you want to use a private plan, or you're any employer and you want to use a private plan, you are required to submit an application by October 15th of 2025. So that's a year in advance of the program starting. The reason that it's so far in advance is to exempt those employers from having to pay taxes during 2026. So that the idea is that you'd submit your application a year in advance, the same timeline you would normally in another year. But beginning on January 1, 2026, if you're approved, you'd be exempt from the withholding and contribution requirements. And then your requirement would be to begin providing benefits on or before October 1. So you could wait till October 1, you could start on January 1, anywhere in between. And then on or before January 15th, 2026, the employers that were approved would need to be reimbursed by the director for any contributions that the employer paid for the calendar quarters ending September 30th, 2025 and December 31, 2025. Realistically, it's going to be the contributions for September 30th unless the employer paid in advance because they weren't sure their application was going to be approved.
And if we shorten the timeline of withholding before sort of program launch, then we would need to change these dates as well, right?
Yep.
Okay.
These dates will need to move if you change any of the run-up dates.
Okay. Can we sort of highlight that so we don't forget?
Yep. Okay, and then that brings us to the effective date. So everything except sections 3 and 4 would take effect on October 1, 2026. Contributions under this current structure would begin July 1, 2025, and benefits would begin October 1, 2026. And that's the bill in a nutshell. 3.5 hour long nutshell. So.
Such a big nut.
To be fair, we just did this in half the time it took your colleagues downstairs to do their walkthrough, so.
We try not to pride ourselves on how wonderful a committee we are, but we are a wonderful committee.
Yeah, and I try to make it a point of kissing up to whichever committee.
We will not tell that other committee that you said how wonderful we were.
I'm just in trouble if people start watching the YouTube videos.
If folks, I don't see anyone raising their hand. What I would love to do a quick review of is all of the things that we noted as we were going along that we want to get back to.
Okay, do you want me to go back through the document with those or just discuss them?
I would love if you just discuss them because I think we'll,
Okay.
if that works for you, whichever works best for you, Damon. Because I think we all have documents in front of me too.
Nope, that's fine.
Everyone, I have some other people's notes too that I might add in here. So as we go.
Sure, do you want me to talk over the technical corrections that have been brought to my attention too? Is this a good time for that or do you want to hold off
You
on?
have a realistic view of, I don't know how many technical corrections you have and how many minutes that would take. But no, actually, we don't need to check with the technical. I
Okay.
see you have a list of technical corrections.
I do.
We'll make them. We don't need to talk through those.
Correct. So,
And that includes all of the technical corrections that Representative Taylor has brought to our attention as well.
yes.
Okay, great.
Those are in here. So for the folks following along at home, the first thing that I have is to spell out the definition of domestic partner. And in addition to that, just doing a global check throughout the subchapter that leave is found in for references to serious illness and to update the parental and family leave references. So The, so next piece here is we're getting into the actual plan itself. So within the plan itself, I mentioned that there are some special fund changes that likely need to be made to clarify that. I'm working on that language with JFO and I'll get back to you. The contribution rate, we need to session law, put that in session law.
And change. Likely.
Yes, and a likely change. Getting into, let me just see here. Okay, the other thing is with respect to an employee of an employer who failed to pay their contributions, make sure that it's clear they're eligible.
And I have a few self-employed clarifications that I'll email you.
Okay, great. And let's see. Right.
I have a question actually about self-employed too. My understanding of what the language reads, but I'm not sure it reads this way, is that you need to be sort of signing up for 3 years, but after you pay in for 6 months, you're eligible to receive benefits. Okay. Does that feel clear in the language to you?
I think so,
Okay.
but I'll reread it.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes, just to be fair, it's hard for me to say if it's clear in the language because I've read it so many times.
Me too.
It clicks in my head.
That's why we get to crowdsource.
Getting into the private plan, there are notes here that we need to clarify the coverage for employees who are coming out of a private plan. And just clarify whether, so there are a couple of different ones that we may want to clarify. One is an employee who was employed by a private plan and now moves to an employer with a state plan. What's their eligibility? And then the other one is if the employer goes out of business.
And then also seasonal employees at private plan employers.
Right. Okay. Can I ask the committee what their feeling is on that, or do you want to?
I don't think we know yet. I think we just want to placehold
Okay.
that that's a thing that we need to figure out.
All right. Just gonna make a quick note.
That one he has. I have no idea. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then the only other note that I have in here is to provide language around additional outreach. Are there other notes that I should add?
I think Representative Andrews had a question in the eligibility section. Okay. I have deployment written down, but you're adding that in. I don't think that's what it was, but, okay. If we find it again, we find it again. Do you know what it was?
Was there also a question about small businesses that don't have wages for profit sharing? Is that
Those,
just treated like payroll tax at this point, like your FICA,
I
right?
think that person isn't an employee, they're
So you're talking about basically a pass-through?
Yeah, pass through
I think that's treated like self-employment income under
That's what I
the
think.
IRS.
Good, okay.
Yep. Other questions?
I think that's it. I think tomorrow we're gonna dive into tax implications with Abby
Yep.
and hear from the commissioner. And then we're also gonna hear from some national folks to highlight some of that. And then we'll get our fiscal note and then I think we'll be ready to bring you back in.
Okay, sounds
Do some
good.
more together.
Sounds amazing.
Thank you, David.
Oh, yeah. I'm just looking back at my notes. I think the self-employed question, and maybe I'm misrepresenting this, was about self-employed people have quarterly taxes, so it would be like potentially an estimate or how we.
Yeah, the.
That's something we can figure out with joint fiscal because they have sort of
Okay.
schemes and I think Abby does too.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some different schemes for that.
Okay.
Under the House General model, there's basically a provision that allows the director of the division to require additional income reporting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things you have to agree to if you opt in, which would mean self-employed individuals would basically need to provide an income statement every quarter to the division, which could be more or less difficult depending on the type of business you run. So, but yeah, there are some alternatives that I know JFO and Abby are looking at.
Thank you, Damien.
Great, thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
This was easy.
Good,
Great.
good.
Markup will be this easy too, right?
Okay, yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, so tomorrow, everyone, we're gonna work with Abby and Craig, a little bit more on H66. Gonna pick back up the Ed Fund Outlook, and then spend the afternoon with JFO on H66. And then try to finish up H67 after the floor tomorrow. If you are a person that's going to experience snow challenges, just let me know. You don't have to do it right now.